What is up, everyone? I'm Justin Parnell, and today's deck tech is Bant Blink in Gladiator. And if you want to know more about Gladiator on Magic Arena, check out my Intro to Gladiator video. But before we start flickering our creatures, help the channel out by taking a second to like and subscribe to keep seeing this sweet, sweet content every week. And now it's time to... Okay, yeah, you almost had me there. Now it's time to... Stop it. Stop. And now it's time... Displacer Kitten! I swear to God! So I want to cover three things. What cards the deck wants, how does this deck want to win, and what cards are critical to the success of this deck. So then what exactly is in this deck? What categories of cards does this deck want? There are a whopping 46 creatures in this deck, and all of them either have an enter the battlefield ability, or an ability that helps another creature leave the battlefield and then come back. Let's talk about the creatures that do the blinking first, the blinkers, if you will. Charming Prince, Icewind Stalwart, Lagrella the Magpie, Oji the Exquisite Blade, Restoration Angel, Soul Herder, Thassa Deep Dwelling, and Yorion Sky Nomad. And Displacer Kitten. You want to blink, I want to blink, our creatures want to blink. So what are the blinky non-creature cards? They're all instants, of course, and the list includes Broker's Safeguard, Cloud Shift, Ephemerate, Essence Flux, Planar Incisions, Illusionist Stratagem, the channel portion of Touch the Spirit Realm, and the archetype's namesake, Momentary Blink. That is a lot of blinking cards. And yes, the deck's overall strategy might remain the same from game to game, but once the game starts, you have to figure out the puzzle of how to win based on the specific creatures that you draw. The creatures with the Enter the Battlefield abilities are pretty evenly divided into two camps, Card Advantage and Disruption. And some creatures can do both, but for here, I'm going to group them into the category where they most often impact the game. The cards that disrupt the game are the ones that mess with your opponent's stuff. They might get rid of creatures, they might blow up artifacts or enchantments, they might make cards in hand cost more, or even counter your opponent's spells. You definitely need a critical mass of disruption creatures to handle each situation your opponent archetype presents you with, because somewhere in the deck, you have a tool to handle it. The rest of the creatures provide you with card advantage in some form. Sometimes this is just drawing cards, but it can also take on other forms as well. Some cards will make tokens, or they might get cards back from your graveyard, or even ramp you into lands, everything that helps you keep the Blink engine humming. Okay, so at this point you've probably noticed something a little unusual for a Bant deck. I have been showing you cards with black in them. Look, I have a sickness. We have a small amount of black cards that we can cast off of our 4 black producing lands. This isn't a free splash of our 4th color, but all 3 of these cards do provide an extra angle of attack that we can't find just in Bant. Acolyte of Affliction returns our creatures from the dead, Urtai can kill creatures or counter spells outright, and Siege Rhino gives us the only way to damage our opponent outside of combat. And to put a cherry on top, we have some Sledgehammers able to quickly close out games. I saved the best for last, because Agent of Treachery solves every permanent problem, and Ascend from Avernus will generally make your opponent's portrait explode on resolution. It's fun to see all of the triggers go on the stack. We have so much value! But how are we supposed to win from here? Look, I will be perfectly honest, I wasn't joking about our opponent's portrait exploding. A concession is the way we win most often by far, just due to overwhelming card advantage. But that's usually because we're headed toward a path where they can't do much to stop us. So, what are those paths? Against aggressive decks, you really just have to run them out of cards. Unless you leave around a bunch of elves so they can draw a Craterhoof Behemoth, most aggro decks won't be able to keep up with the incidental card draw and life gain over time. So for the most part, don't be afraid to make trades in combat aggressively. You're the control deck in this situation, and you have way more good draws in the middle and late game than they do. The card that changes the dynamic of the board most often is Displacer Kitten. Being able to cast a cheap blink spell and target 2 creatures can very quickly turn around a game. The kitty is one of the cards I value the highest, as its upside to turbocharge the rest of the deck can't be understated, even if it's a little scoundrel. Oh, come on! And finally, there are 2 soft locks in the deck. The first is pretty simple. Have either Shipwreck Dowser or Saiba Siphoner alongside either Frilled Mystic or Urtai Resurrected and cast Illusionist Stratagem. And you can counter a spell and get back the Stratagem as many times as you have 4 mana. This will draw a concession pretty quickly, but if not, you can beat down with those creatures in the meantime. The second is Infinite Life, and I'm putting quotes around infinite, because you do have to do clicking to target things continually. So eventually, you'll decide you have enough life and stop, or Arena will decide that you've done it enough and pass your turn. This involves both Restoration Angel and Icewind Stalwart specifically, and either Prosperous Innkeeper or either side of Lunarch Veteran. Having one of the blinkers in play, you target the other one, and then they will blink each other over and over and over, gaining you a life each time one enters the battlefield. So what cards can you not do without when playing this deck? What are the must-craft cards with your wild cards? This deck is very customizable, and it's probably the deck that gets the most updates from set to set. Because of that, there are very few must-have cards in the deck as long as you follow the general philosophy I laid out earlier in the video. There are some exceptions to this, however. The cards you have to have, like absolutely have to have, are between 12 and 15 blinking cards, between spells and creatures. This might seem like a lot, but as long as you learn to hold them for the right opportunity, or the right option rather than your first option, they make the deck smooth even in the high numbers. And on the creature side, cards you absolutely have to have are Agent of Treachery, Frilled Mystic, Displacer Kitten, Skyclave Apparition, and Thragtusk. Those 5. No cards can replicate what all of those do from a versatility or an ability standpoint. And you also certainly don't have to do the Black Splash, but if you have the cards already and you don't need to craft them, I definitely recommend it. Bant Blink is an ever-evolving deck, so check the latest expansion for good additions to the archetype. And thank you all so much for watching and getting to the end of the video. Please follow me on my social media channels right here, and of course, like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any great content from Gladiator, Commander, or more. And if you are interested in more Gladiator, check out the Gladiator playlist, which has an intro to the format and other deck techs. I'm Justin Parnell, and I'll see you next time. Now, where did that cat put those slots? I think I'm going to need those.